Hi guys, so Rishi Sunak appeared next to the Ukrainian president to answer questions from the media over what Britain has been doing to help Ukraine, but one question came up about Russian money laundering within Britain. Rishi Sunak struggled at first and then lied about how Britain was leading the way when it came to punishing those with links to the Putin regime who had assets in the United Kingdom. Do you remember Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak as Chancellor giving oligarchs a window of time to sort out their affairs? Well, have a listen to this.
What are your steps to clear the reputation of London as a city that is still laundering Russian money? Thank you.
Okay. And with regard to sanctions, I think as you saw at the beginning of this conflict, I used to be the finance minister, and we put in place, the President talked about it earlier today, probably the most extensive and forward-leaning sanctions package of any country at the beginning of this conflict.
No, there were other countries in Europe which were imposing much stricter sanctions and faster sanctions on these individuals who have links to Putin. The UK gave them some time to sort out their affairs. I think it was something like 30 to 60 days. And what did people like the owner of one of those football teams, I forget what his name is, he moved his assets out of the United Kingdom to avoid them being seized, to avoid them being frozen.
To demonstrate very clearly that Russia's aggression was unacceptable and we would punish them in every which way we could. We've announced further sanctions today, but continually when it comes to sanctions, we have, I think, led. And you remember the conversations we had on things like SWIFT and banks right at the beginning of this conflict. Again, it was Britain that led the way in pushing for very strict sanctions. And as I said, we've announced further today. And wherever we can continue, to tighten them and do more, we will look to do so.
Apart from Infosys, the company that my wife is connected to, that company is still operating in Moscow and doesn't seem to have any intentions of removing its operations from Moscow. No, but on the bigger point of the Conservative Party's connections to Russian money, this is Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the opposition, about 5 years ago when Theresa May was Prime Minister. Have a listen to what he had to say and then have a listen to how the Conservatives responded to it.
Mr. Speaker, we're all familiar with the way huge fortunes, often acquired in the most dubious circumstances in Russia, sometimes connected with criminal elements, have ended up sheltering in London and trying to buy political influence in British party politics. Meddling in elections, as the Prime Minister put it, there has been over £800,000 worth of donations to the Conservative Party from Russian oligarchs and their associates. So, Mr. Speaker, if that is the evidence before the government, even before the investigation into Salisbury is complete, the government could be taking action to introduce new financial sanctions powers. But instead, Mr. Speaker, they are currently resisting Labour's amendments to the Sanctions and Money Laundering Bill, which could introduce the so-called Magnitsky powers. So will the Prime Minister agree today to back those amendments to the Sanctions and Money Laundering Bill?
The Right Honourable Gentleman raised the issue of party donations. I will say two things to him. First of all, as my right honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, said at the weekend, you shouldn't tar anybody who lives in this country with of Russian extraction with the same brush.
Wow. Okay. At this time, I think it was around this time, the guy on the left there, Boris Johnson, received about £100,000 donation from the wife of a former member of Vladimir Putin's cabinet to play tennis with him. Of course, it was just to play tennis. It was not about political influence. Boris Johnson was the foreign minister at the time, foreign secretary, at the time. Why do you think the wife of a former Russian minister paid over £100,000 to play tennis with Boris Johnson? Did she maybe mistake him for Boris Becker and say, I want to play tennis with Boris Becker. Here's 100,000. Oh, it's actually Boris Johnson. Maybe they gave the money back. No, actually, they didn't give the money back. But don't tar all Russians with the same brush here.
And secondly, there are rules on party political donations, and I can assure him that my party, and I hope all parties, follow those rules.
This was about 5 years ago, and it was £800,000 at that stage. Since then, it's obviously gone up. And the Conservatives have defended Russian investment in the Conservative Party for years. And it's a little bit weak to hear the current Prime Minister talk about how, yes, we are the ones leading the charge in imposing sanctions on Russian individuals, when his own wife has connections to a company that's still operating in Russia. It's all a bit pathetic. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.